Welcome to the Doo Divas Smells Like Money podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Chin Taylor, CEO and founder of Creative Raven, the firm that helps wastewater industry contractors and manufacturers unlock the power of digital marketing, AI, and PR to boost sales and opportunities. Whether it's through our online marketing and lead generation programs or providing a fully outsourced marketing department, we are passionate about helping businesses in the wastewater and civil infrastructure sectors not just survive, but thrive in today's digital world. Each episode, I'll be bringing you expert tips and strategies to help you grow and succeed. Let's dive in. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Doo Divas Smells Like Money podcast. We are rounding out the third in our three-part series on manhole safety. And we have brought back one of my favorite and regular guests here on the podcast, Lewis Titus of Titus Wastewater Solutions. Now, you may remember that Lewis is connected with the Titus Twister and the floating aerator, and coming soon, the stationary directional flow aerator for oxidation dishes. But many may not know that Titus also supplies composite manholes with some really interesting little features, such as the Titus twist lock. And so today, to round out the series, we want to talk about composite manholes, and that not all composite manholes are created equal, and some of their benefits. And so thank you for coming back onto the show, Lewis.
Oh, pleasure to be here. It's always a lot of fun, Suzanne.
Great. So when we talk about composite manholes, and, the first two episodes that we did, one was on the light ring and, illuminating a manhole to do work in and around a manhole. The second was with the power lifter, which is to help when you have those very heavy cast iron and other, metal manholes, to lift them to prevent injury. But then we've got the classification of the composite manholes. And for those cities that are fortunate enough to have that budget when they're doing rehab or whatnot, to replace that old cast iron manhole or manhole lid with a composite cover, tell us some of the features that they should be looking for as far as choosing the composite manhole that they want to. If they're going to go that route, what should they be looking for in a composite manhole for replacement?
Well, let's kind of roll it back maybe a little bit further to that.
Sure.
And what the purpose of them was to start with. I've been involved in composites since about 2010. I sold ductile iron manholes for years.
Mm-hmm.
And the advantage of ductile iron, they were hinged and they were easier to open. They weren't any lighter, but they featured hinges where you could put a bar in and safely open it without back injuries. The issues we ran into with ductile iron is it corrodes pretty bad. The corrosion resistance on them wasn't as good as cast iron, for instance, but they were twice as strong. And long story short, back about 2010, there was a guy with a composite factory up in Muskegon, Michigan, who made composite springs and parts for MRI machines and all kinds of different things with composites. He was in the automotive industry building parts for automotive. But composites are really strong and really light and totally corrosion proof. And so he sent his son out to basically survey the market to see if there was any need for composite manholes. And so he's the guy that started all this. It was a company called GMI at the time. And they went out and did a survey and said basically the market is endless because there are billions of manholes and all of them at one time or another need replaced, and all of them are dangerous. So now when I say dangerous, Liberty Mutual did a big study on utilities, what most of the injuries in utilities derive from. And their conclusion was the number one cause of injuries in the utility business. This is whether it's telephone companies, electric companies, sewer, water, doesn't matter. If you have a manhole frame and cover, The number one cause of injuries in that business is opening a heavy metal manhole cover. And as you know, when you're talking to some people that make equipment that actually helps remove that without breaking your back, but they're very heavy. And so, number one cause of injuries is opening that manhole, and it's not just backs; it's torn biceps, it's broken toes, broken fingers. There's all kinds of ways to get hurt with a either whether it's a ductile iron or a cast iron manhole cover. All of them are heavy. They most of them are heavily corroded, which handling it makes it much more difficult to handle them. So when you're talking some of the lifting devices that you've been talking about on this series, that's fine and good if the manhole's not froze solid. But the corrosion welding that happens, these literally will weld the lid to the frame. I was just in a pretty good sized town in California, and they had a big trunk sewer line with 60 manholes on it. And out of the 60, they could get one of them opened. Out of
Wow.
60 manholes, they could get one open. So even if you've got a magnetic lifter or whatever, if the thing's corroded completely solid, you're not going to get it open without a 12-pound hammer, sledgehammer beating on it. And that's typically what they do. They take a 12-pound sledgehammer and they start beating on them. And the issue with that is chunks of metal break off, and so you can get chunks of metal in your eye from that. What usually happens, they'll beat on them till they break them because they're brittle, and the whole manhole will fall down inside. And well, now they got to go down in there and extract that. So there's all kinds of safety problems with cast iron and ductile iron both. Ductile iron, yeah, it's lighter. It's also a lot stronger than cast. It corrodes, in my experience, the corrosion rate is probably 2 or 3 times worse than cast iron, which means you get even more corrosion welding.
Right. So,
So
getting
there's a
back
little bit of
to
background there about
right.
why composite manholes.
And then if you're
Yeah.
lucky enough, because we were talking about, safety and lifting, is that if you're lucky enough at the corrosion with that hammer to, somehow get it loose, then you've got a lifting device to do that. But
Yes.
the ideal situation is if you're in that position financially that you can replace instead of replacing it with the same old, to really think about composite. And so
Yes.
let's talk about one thing that I wanted to bring out was that I know understand from composite that makes them so much besides the injury factor and the safety
Mhm.
and no corrosion is that it's a completely tight seal. So it can, or pretty much a tight seal, that it can really help a lot with eye and eye issues during heavy wet weather events. And that also, and this is funny, you had mentioned to me offline that I still, for the life of me, cannot figure out why someone would do this, but I guess money, follow the money. Is that why would someone want to steal a manhole lid? And so that is one of the features of your composite manholes is that they are equipped with this twist lock mechanism. So let's
Well,
talk
close.
a
It's
bit about that.
twist. Let me correct you there. It's twist lift lock.
Twist lift lock. Thank you.
Yeah.
I know that that's a trademark name. So
Yes.
let's talk
Twist
about
lift.
that a little bit, of that tight seal and that locking mechanism, because
Yeah.
that's important for the audience to hear.
Well, again, we go back to safety. Cast iron and ductile iron have a recycle value. So metal thieves will steal them. And, especially when you get down in the south where you're close to the Mexican border, where they can pull these lids out and get them across the border or sell them to recyclers. The worst case I seen was up in Washington. I won't mention the city, but somebody stole 70 cast iron storm grates one night. Went around town, stole 70 of them, and they couldn't figure out who did it. Well, they finally somebody turned them in. It was an auto recycler, and he was stealing that stuff, and he would throw them in a car, and it'd crush the car. Well, it'd add a couple 100 pounds to every car, and so again, he was able to get more money out of them because right now the recyclers are pretty they're regulated pretty heavy because of the metal theft of manhole covers and storm grates. It's not any kind of cast iron. Heck, they steal guardrails now and sell it for scrap metal. They steal wire. But all this is a safety hazard because when somebody steals a lid or a grate or whatever it is, you got an opening there for a car to drive off, a motorcycle to ride off in, a bicycle, or somebody to step off in. And one of the best examples I can give you is on the coast of California where they got the beach areas. They got massive parking lots where everybody parks at the beaches. Well, the kids like to party out there, and kids, they may not be stealing manholes, but they got to get in everything, and they would open manholes up and dump garbage down them, and again, the problem with that is that if they fall in the hole, it's probably going to kill them.
Right.
And so having an open manhole is extremely, extremely dangerous. Uh, and it's not just from theft, but they also cast iron especially tends to break. It's brittle. And I'll give you an example. I was driving down the street in Ontario, California, and one of my customers had put a bunch of composites in, and I was examining them on a Sunday afternoon on a weekend, admiring my brand new composite manholes. And I get to an intersection, and there's a cast iron manhole out in the middle of the intersection, which did not belong to my customer, but it was broken half, and half of it had fell down in a manhole. This is the middle of a busy boulevard with heavy traffic on it. And literally, I parked on the manhole, put my flashers on, and called the police because I didn't know whose manhole it was. And till we get utility crews out there to fix it.
Right.
So again, the safety issue is not just opening manholes; it's metal theft, which is very prevalent, especially down in California, and Texas, and Arizona, and some of these places adjacent to the border where once you get it across the border, it's not as regulated as it is in the United States
Right.
for scrap metal. Scrap metal companies in the United States, they see manholes covers come in, and you don't get your money until they do the investigation and make sure that it's legitimate. And sometimes it is because they pull them out and replace them and they recycle them. But it's pretty heavily regulated in the United States. Not that way when you go across the border.
Wow.
So there's a lot of reasons that it's not just opening the manhole for safety. It's the metal theft and then the
Protecting the
breakage.
community. Yeah, just protecting the community.
Yes.
So you don't have to have a locking mechanism on your composite manhole, but you as a manufacturer and the brand that you work with decided to make that part of it. So tell us about that and how that works.
Well, that's not quite accurate.
Oh, sorry about that.
Our lids are very light. A standard 24-inch clear opening lid, which is a 26-inch diameter, man, it only weighs 32 pounds, and
Wow.
it has a urethane rubber edge on the lid and urethane seat in the frame, so it's urethane against urethane, which makes them absolutely quiet and helps to seal them from eye and keeps the odors in. So, for instance, LA County put a whole bunch of them down through Marina Del Rey a few years ago for odor control. The only reason they put them in, odor control. Uh,
Wow.
now,
Interesting.
there's other reasons besides lightweight, and but a composite's also completely corrosion proof. There's nothing in it to corrode. Our lock system, we put it in because a lid that lock can get lid that light can get dislodged, and then you got an open manhole. So we lock all of ours. And when I first got involved in this, the locks weren't very good. Matter of fact, they were terrible. And I designed a new lid, or excuse me, a new lock called the twist lift that has a very high security head and a specialized tool. And instead of having bolts, a lot of people bolt them down. The problem with bolts are you got to line up bolt holes, and the threads get stripped out, and they put them in, and they don't want to fool with trying to line up all the bolt holes to get the bolts in. So pretty quick they throw all the bolts away. Well, that's always a disaster, whether it's a cast iron lid or a composite. Ours are a quarter turn twist lock. It's a cam lock that turns a quarter turn. So it literally turns underneath the frame. And when it does that, it's a cam lock. So it pulls the lid down tight against the seat. Urethane against urethane, it pulls it down tight against the seat. They make no noise. And again, it reduces the infiltration. They're typically not completely watertight, but pretty close to it. I have customers that want them totally watertight, and we put an O-ring in, and they're completely watertight. Uh, but it's a very high security lock the way it's designed. It takes a very specialized tool. And I'm not saying you can't get it open without the tool, but it's difficult, and most vandals and thieves don't. Well, number one, there's no recycle value to a composite manhole, so they don't steal. Uh, you still have the vandalism problem, but when it's difficult to get into them, they don't fool with them. It's too much trouble. Where, cast iron, they got a hole in it. You grab it with a J hook and you pull it out and throw it on a trailer, and off you go. Oh, it's pretty simple. Uh,
So when we
there's
talk
a
about,
lot to it. This,
oh,
this sounds like a pretty simple thing, but it's not. And it took us a lot of years to develop a product that was strong enough. That's everything. Everybody worries about strength.
mhm,
And first thing everybody says, well, can you put that in the street? Well, will it take heavy truck traffic? Will it even take car traffic? Yeah, I had one customer when they first started using them, they put one in their parking lot at their operations yard, and every night they parked the front tire of a Vector truck, which is 12, 14,000 pounds. They parked the front tire and leave it there all night. They did that for 6 months. And of course, it had no effect on it. And so then they were okay with it. So strength is really important.
mhm,
And composites, the way we build our composites, and I work with EJ. EJ is a big company, and they use continuous filament fiberglass. There's about 25 layers of fiberglass, and it's the strongest composite lid on the market. It's much stronger than most of my competition, who uses chopped fiberglass, mostly chopped fiberglass, which is injected into a mold. Ours is continuous filament. It's layers of it crosswise. It's much stronger and it's much lighter. Our composites are typically about a third the weight of my competitors. Uh, but they're a little more expensive, but you have the strength. So to give you an example, there's really two ratings on cast iron manholes. There's H20, which is that's your standard traffic, light traffic, load rated manholes. They're rated for a 40,000 pound load. And then there's H25, which is heavy truck traffic, and that's your heavy duty manholes. And they typically go into boulevards and high speed areas where you have major size trucks pounding them. And they're rated for 50,000 pounds. You got a 40,000 pound to 50,000 pound. If you put one of those in a hydraulic press, the H25 model will take about 60,000 pounds before it blows up. And when I say blows up, they break into a million pieces. They explode. Total failure. My composites typically fail about twice that, about 120,000 pounds. So now we're talking a unit that's 20% of the weight, which makes it safer to operate open. They don't corrode. They minimize the I&I issues, and they take a 120,000 pound load before they fail. And when they do fail, you'll break the bottom layer of fiberglass. The rest of it remains intact, so it's not a catastrophic failure. Literally, when they put them in a press and take them to failure, it sounds like a stick of dynamite going off. They back the press off, you pull the lid out, and it goes right back to its original shape, and it's all in one piece. And you put it back in the press and you take it to failure, it's take 90,000 pounds after it's already been broken once. So they're incredibly strong. I have customers that, for instance, I have one in East LA. It's where all uh, the big shipping centers are, the big
mhm.
trucking centers are, and it's nothing but heavy trucks. All they use is composites. They don't use anything else. I had a straight in Idaho where they have a potato processing plant, and they've got these giant trucks bringing in sugar beets. And they're so hard on the road, they had to build a concrete road into this place because asphalt wouldn't hold up to these trucks.
Wow.
Their answer was composite manholes because they're right in wheel line, heavy truck traffic areas. So the notion that a composite's not as strong is totally false. They're typically twice as strong. The EJ units are. Again, most of my competitors use chopped fiberglass or a combination of chopped fiberglass with maybe a layer of fiberglass, but they're not near as strong. They won't take the load. And the big part is they won't take impact cycle testing. which is the other thing that EJ does that differentiates them from everybody else. We have a machine that puts a 16,000 pound blow on a manhole, and we give it 2 million cycles, and they have no loss of performance. It takes 4 months to do the test. Standard unit won't last a week. So,
So that's an important criteria if you're shopping
yes,
around for this. You sold me on it, just the whole concept of composite. But when you're that differential of the types of composites, as we said early on, that not all are created equal, is that maybe as a buyer, ask what
yes,
is the testing?
yes,
How has it done under these types of stress tests, for lack of
yes.
a better term? So I'm
And it,
sold.
and
So
again, it's not just load testing, it's impact testing.
impact testing.
Yes, because and you put it in the street, you got 80,000, 100,000 pound trucks pounding it, 120,000. Now you go to Idaho and some of these states, these trucks are, California, it's all 80,000 pound trucks. That's all they allow. You go other places, it's way more than that. And the other one that's really heavy is city buses. These big city buses are almost all of them overweight, and they pound this stuff. So impact cycle and load testing. And then when you take into effect that they never corrode, there's no corrosion issues. You're not out there beating on them with a sledgehammer. That aspect is completely gone. The odors are gone. The I&I reduction is tremendous. If you have an I&I problem, uh, these are really the solution to I&I. And everybody worries about not putting ventilated manholes in the street, which everybody wants a bunch of holes in a manhole to ventilate it. Well, a little bit about that. When it's raining hard and there's water running down the street, a 1 inch hole, 1 inch vent hole, one is 60 gallons a minute. You got six of those in there. Take, 60 times six. Uh, and some of them, I see some that have 12 to 15 vent holes in them. When it's raining hard, all that goes to your treatment plant. And that's why when you go to wastewater treatment plants, and they really don't understand it, they think all the surge in water and the rain events coming through groundwater infiltration. Because these plants in 30, 40 minutes will double in flow. They'll go from 10 MGD to 20 MGD. Sometimes they'll triple. Most of that's coming through vent holes and manhole covers. So you eliminate that, you eliminate those problems at the treatment plant, you really eliminate all the issues. And the twist lift lock itself, let's go back a little bit to the lock system. We've spent a lot of time. We started out using 316 stainless steel. We found out it wasn't strong enough. We went to 17.4 stainless steel, really, really strong, wouldn't hold up to high H2S. Now we use titanium. It's the most expensive lock system there is in the world. Totally corrosion proof, 2.5 times stronger than 316 stainless steel. So you have a lock that's much stronger and have all the corrosion resistance. What we have now, while yes, it's an expensive system, the end of the day, when you look at all the issues, what it costs for a back injury, 100 grand for a back injury today. Uh, and on and on and on. The metal theft, having to, somebody steals a manhole, they're not going to take another lid out and put it in because it probably won't fit. Because cast iron's notoriously known for the lids not being interchangeable. Oh,
So that brings me to the question that I want to wrap up with for here, because
uh-huh.
you sold me. I mean, the benefits, like I said, if it's within the means and this is what you're going to do and you have to replace it anyway, that this sounds like this is the way that the industry should be moving. Obviously, we can't replace everything, but little by little, it can be replaced. It just seems to make sense. So,
Yes.
what is involved? Because this was something that I did not understand about composites. It's not like you can just pull the old thing out and then drop this in. It's a little more complex than that. And I think that our audience needs to understand, okay, this sounds good. I want to move in this direction. What am I going to need to be prepared for in order to replace my cast iron manhole ring and cover with a composite? So just briefly take us through those steps and what you need to be aware of as far as installation goes for this.
Well, there's not a lot of difference between installing a composite, installing a cast iron manhole. It's a
Really?
ring.
Okay.
It can be put on grade rings. I don't like to use grade rings. I don't use grade rings. If you're going to use grade rings, there are some of the synthetic grade rings are compatible with the composite lids. Some of them are not. And so I want to stress that if you're going to use a synthetic grade ring, I have no problem with that if it's compatible. And you need to talk to me and I can tell you what works and what doesn't work. But if it's not a compatible grade ring, you don't want to use it. The other thing you can do, our frames weigh less than 30 pounds. They're really light. So part of the problem with synthetic grade rings is they're difficult to use. There's a lot of you got to have a lot of parts. You got to have all these different grade rings to get and slope rings and shims to get the grade perfect. And when you're putting in a manhole, you want to have it perfectly level, or it's going to make noise. It's going to go thump thump, or it's going to go clang clang. Oh, you want it level with the road. It's tough to do that with grade rings. If they're putting in concrete grade rings, most of them are broke when they put them in. And then they put mud and they'll put wood shims in and the wood deteriorates and pretty quick the whole thing collapses. So one thing I really want to emphasize is when you're installing a frame and cover, and it really gets overlooked. There's all kinds of standards for the concrete manhole itself. There's no standards for the chimney section. It's a bunch of broken up concrete usually. So the synthetic grade rings were a big improvement, but they're expensive and they're complicated to install, and it requires some training to install them and get them sealed. We went to what we call a hang and pour, which eliminates all that, and we literally take a couple 8-foot 2x4s and we wire tie them to the frame. We pull out the broken grade rings. We hang it over the top of it. It's again hang and pour. It's hanging the frame. The 2x4s, when they set on the street, perfectly set the camper and caster of the street. So they're perfect every time. We put an inner tube inside of that and we inflate it, and we use that for a concrete form. If it's a real deep one, we might have to put a plastic liner in there and an inner tube to support it. But once that's done, whether you use a grade ring or not, when you're using grade rings, you got to pour a collar around it. They all have a collar around them. You don't really need grade rings with a hand pour because you're going to pour that same collar, but it's instead of having a grade ring, which is thin and tend to break, you're going to have a solid concrete chimney section. So I hope that all makes sense to everybody. If anybody wants more information, they're welcome to give me a call and I can walk them through it. I do training on this quite a bit, and but once you start doing this, it's faster, it's more accurate. The manholes come out perfectly every time. The cars drive over them. You don't even know they're there because, again, the camber caster is perfect. Way less time in it for the contractor. It saves them money. For the city, they get a much nicer installation. One thing about it, you cannot put a composite lid into a cast iron frame. It virtually never works. One thing, our lock has to operate with that frame and the lid has to fit in that frame, and it almost never happens. So we do recommend, if you're going to go to composites, it's a total change out. The easiest time to do that is if you have one failing and you got to replace it anyway, you put a composite in. Or if you're doing overlay projects. I just mentioned one where they got 60 manholes. Where they're getting ready to do an overlay project, they want to replace every one all the way down through that. And you already got the street tore up. That's the time to do it. We can put magnets in there so you can locate it with a locator if it does get paved over. I do recommend you don't pave over the top of any kind of manhole. The correct way to do it is to raise the frame and do the job correctly. A lot of times that doesn't happen. People don't always listen to me. Imagine that, but
well, it's funny, Lewis, that you would say that. Just in wrapping up, I remember years ago being at the Houston Convention Center for the UCT show. And we were all standing around laughing because they had, for some reason, had extended the sidewalk and the curbing in front of the convention center. And what they had done with the curb is they had gone over half of the manhole. So half of it was underneath the lid, half of it was under the curb, and the other half was still sitting in the street. Yeah. And a number of us were kind of, we're all underground professors, we're all looking at each other. And somebody took a picture, and this was in the early days of Facebook, and put it up there with the caption, Houston, we have a problem.
That's one I haven't seen. I've seen a lot of really dumb things, but
Hopefully they've corrected it by now. Maybe social media, alerted the city to that was probably not a good idea. Or
yes.
what part of when the contractor was building the curb, doing the form of the curb, did you not see that that was a manhole there? We all thought it was pretty funny. But anyway, Lewis, thank you so much for coming on the
Could I
show.
say one more thing?
Sure.
I do want to
Absolutely.
bring up one more safety issue that we
Yes,
haven't discussed yet. If I got another couple minutes, uh,
absolutely. We're all
almost
about,
all manholes are 24-inch clear openings. That's the standard. You do see some big ones where they have to use a big one, but the reason they don't like to use big ones is, if you take a 3 foot diameter cast iron manhole, that manhole weighs about 400 pounds, 350, 400 pounds. It's
wow.
extremely heavy, extremely hard to open. A lot of, especially California, is really notorious for them. They'll have a 38-inch manhole with a 24-inch manhole in the middle of the lid. So they don't have to open the big one except for when they actually have to, if they have to get something big down it. The reason they do that, the reason for 24-inch manholes is because it's really as big as you can handle by hand without having to have heavy equipment to lift it out. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Yes.
So they're all 20. Now, the problem with a 24-inch manhole, and as you're aware, H2S is an issue in sewers, and it's a confined space. And if you have to do an entry into that manhole, you have to do a confined space entry, which means you got to test for H2S and all this stuff. But in the event of an accident, if a man has to go in there with an oxygen pack on, you can't go down through a 24-inch manhole. You can through a 36-inch manhole. So it's another safety feature. And we make these composites up to their 38-inch, 36-inch clear opening. They're big enough for a man with an air pack on to go down in that manhole in the event of an emergency, or just doing maintenance where they just need a big opening to get their equipment in there. And a 38-inch composite manhole weighs 75 pounds. It's about 50 pounds lighter than a standard cast iron 24-inch manhole. And it's still twice as strong, even that big.
Wow.
So another safety deal that a lot of people don't even give any consideration to. But again, you go around California, you'll see lids inside of a lid. And the problem with that is they really tend to rattle. They make a lot of noise. The
A lot
center
of
lid
pressure.
almost always rattles in that frame. And they're you're still, unless you want to pull that 38-inch part out, you still got that little tiny hole to get in and do maintenance. Maintenance is tough down through a 24-inch hole.
Wow.
Anyway, I'll finish off with that.
And Lewis, wow, just some of the things that you shared today, like I thought I knew a lot about this subject, but learned a whole bunch today. And just like little factoids, or like you were saying about how these composite manholes are made, or even just what you were saying about the 24-inch, these little things that we don't think about, but really sometimes the devil's in the details, as they say, that it can really
Sure.
make a difference when we're
Yes.
making any type of purchasing or maintenance decision. So I really want to, thank you for just coming on and being candid about it.
Oh, I
Because
could probably go on for
I
an
think it's
hour.
important. I think it's important that, manufacturers be, as I would call it, say the difficult things and be unapologetic about being an industrial truth teller. Because
Yes.
sometimes we hear things that maybe we don't want to hear, but we absolutely need to hear. And
Yes.
so, again, thank you for sharing your time with me today. Always a delight to have you on the show. And for those of you listening, hope you learned something about this and are food for thought. So, with that, Lewis, how can people get in touch with you to learn more about your composite manholes and all the other, fascinating things that Titus Wastewater Solutions offers?
Now go to our website, tituswws.com. You can email me, Lewis at tituswws.com. My phone number, I don't know if I should give it out, but everybody's got my phone number. So it's 541-948-4458. I'm pretty much always answer my phone or get right back to people. But I've been doing this for 25 years and I go all over the United States. I see everything. I see all the mistakes. And we've really tried to take a track to where we solve all the problems with manholes. Not just the covers, the chimney section, the manhole itself. I can help you with all that kind of stuff. Uh, Been
Great.
doing it a long time.
Yeah. Oh, you have. And Lewis, for those of you who are on LinkedIn, Lewis has a really interesting video series, little short snippets called Conversations with the Wastewater Whisperer. That for those of you tuning in, I invite you to check it out. We have a lot of fun producing those together. And so again, Lewis, thank you so much. And thank you, audience, for tuning in. And until next time, keep it flowing. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you're ready to take your marketing to the next level and start increasing sales and opportunities for your business, reach out to us at Creative Raven. We're here to help you thrive in the digital landscape. Visit creativeraven.com or click the link in the show notes below to schedule a call and learn how we can support your growth. If you enjoyed the insights on today's episode, be sure to hit subscribe so you'll never miss an update. Until next time, keep growing and keep it flowing.